Now we're going to work on just claim and evidence. So we know that matter is the stuff that everything is made up of, and this is either in the front of your science notebook from previous days if you are face-to-face, or I also included a PDF of it so you can have it open at the same time so you don't have to go into your old folders and such to look for it. So if we're talking about our question, say our question is, where does a plant get the matter it needs to grow? Well, we've got our claim restates our question, making it into a sentence form. So if we're talking about, let's restate it. So we could say a plant gets the matter it needs to grow from. Now, if we're trying to figure out where they get their matter from, well, let's look back at our paper. So if we're trying to figure out where they get their matter, so also think back to page 65 where we had that whole cycle through. So we know that plants, if we're looking down here, it says that a scientist named Van Helmont weighed some soil and planted a willow tree in the soil. Over 5 years, the willow tree gained 74 kilograms and the soil only lost 0.05 kilograms. Well, we know that it had to have gotten that matter. It didn't just come out of nowhere. We know that had to have gotten it from somewhere. So we know that that's where, in order for it to grow, it has to create food, and that creating food has to be from photosynthesis. So if we're saying a plant gets the matter it needs to grow from, well, we know it gets it from making its own food, that it needs to make their own food from carbon dioxide and water, because we know that that's through photosynthesis. Now we need to come up with some sort of evidence to support it. Well, if we're looking, let's just use this. So if this were true, like if they got it from soil, which we know that the plant did not get it from soil, say that it got it from soil, if before it was whatever, and after it was 74 kilograms, we would expect the soil to have lost 74 kilograms if it had taken it from the soil. So we know that that's possibly not true. So let's go ahead and use that as evidence to support that it gets it from carbon dioxide. So I'm going to say maybe willow tree gained 74 kilograms over 5 years, but the soil only lost 0.05 kilograms. So we know that it couldn't have gotten it from soil. So that's evidence to support it. And we also know, let's go see where, if we know they get it from their own food, making their own food, they take carbon dioxide, water, and then they also have sunlight. So if we're looking at letter C, it says plants can be grown in the presence of sunlight with only air plus water containing some minerals. So we could also add in that plants can be grown in the presence of sunlight with only air plus water containing some dissolved minerals. But how do we know that, how do they get their food? Well, we know their food is sugar, so how do they make their own sugar? Well, if we're looking at where do they make their own sugar, let's look down at this letter E. It says, plants conduct photosynthesis to make their own food. When they do this, they use carbon dioxide and water as the source of matter they need to make sugars. Boom, right there. So if we're looking at that, it says plants that live on land get water from the soil, the carbon dioxide from the air. Plants that live in the water use carbon dioxide that is dissolved in the water. So see if you can figure out what we should write in order to support evidence that the plant gets matter from their own food using carbon dioxide and water. Go ahead and pause this and then go ahead and finish writing this down. Hopefully you were able to come up with something like plants use carbon dioxide and water as the source of matter they need to make sugars. the carbon dioxide is either in the air or in the water. And where did I get that from? My evidence is right in letter E. And we could also say, if we're trying to figure out where do they get that matter from, well, we know that all living things are made up of substances that are carbon, so we could even add that in there as well.